Welcome to the Next Level Facebook Ads Podcast with Phil Graham. We help you master Facebook ads and give you an unfair advantage over your competition. Are you ready? Let's go.
What's up, podcast family? Welcome to the Next Level Facebook Ads Podcast, episode 420. Phil Graham here. I've got a great show for you guys this week. It's something that I get asked all the time. So today, I'm going to cover how I would spend $1,000 on Facebook and Instagram ads this month. So if you gave me just $1,000 for ads, I'm going to tell you exactly how I would spend it. No fluff, no BS. I'm going to break it all down so you can see how I would spend it and what I see working right now. And I also wanted to mention, we're talking about how I would spend $1,000 this month. If you have some more to spend than that, this could still apply to you. You could just up the percentages. But I wanted to try and cover something on the lower end. And then in a future episode, I'll do something on a much higher end, as I've also worked with clients with large budgets as well. Now, before we jump into that, if you guys are actually looking for some help with your ads, if you want to get better at this stuff, maybe you're looking for some one-on-one coaching, or maybe you would just prefer to have somebody do it for you so you don't have to mess with it or worry about it yourself. For either one of those things, just go to my website, philgrahamdigital.com, or you can DM me on Instagram at philgrahamdigital, and I would love to connect with you. And it's really funny. Sometimes I'll get somebody on the call who says they've been listening for years and decided to finally schedule a call. Other times it's somebody that just found me like the day before and scheduled a call. But either way, I love connecting with listeners and I love helping people. So feel free to schedule a call if you would like. So my friends, let's jump in and talk about how I would spend $1,000 on Facebook and Instagram ads this month. It's important to say that, first of all, there's a lot of variables. I mean, there always is. So if I were actually running your ads for you or consulting you, I would know a lot more about your business, your situation, your goals, and many other things. And so what I would do if I were working with you personally might be different than what I'm going to describe today. But without knowing you personally and knowing all your stuff, this is what I would recommend. And it's always important also to mention that not only are there lots of variables, results can vary. You can't expect a guaranteed result from anything you do. You have to really test and then adapt to what's happening. So don't ever forget that. There's a lot of fake gurus out there that'll tell you different, but they're full of crap. So let's start with step number one, which is really the strategy. I would implement what I call a cold and warm strategy. So out of the $1,000 that we would have for the month, I would use 50% of that approximately going towards cold traffic. Now, this is one of those things that can vary wildly because if you've already been doing lots of advertising and have a lot of warm traffic, then I might do a lot more towards warm. But for somebody that might not have a lot of people in their warm traffic, then I would do more to cold traffic. So it does really depend. But generalities here, I would do about 50% of that budget, meaning $500 towards cold traffic. And we would be testing different things, but 50% would be going towards cold traffic. And then about 30% or $300 of that would be going towards warm traffic, retargeting. And then the other 20% I would use specifically for testing. And this could be both cold and warm or one or the other. But I would be testing different headlines and ad copy and creatives and stuff like that. Or if you're already kind of advanced and been, testing lots of things, I would use that 20% to scale what is already working or what starts working as you're spending your money. So again, lots of variables, but that's generally what I would do. 50%, so $500 towards cold traffic, $300 towards warm, $200 towards either testing and or scaling during the month. You got to be flexible with this. Again, like I said, if your warm audience isn't very large, definitely I would shift more towards the cold audience. But I definitely would not take any budget away from the learning, from the testing. That 20%, that $200, I think is super important to test different things. So that is the strategy, that cold and warm strategy. So let's talk about step two. Now that you know how I would spend the money, what kind of campaigns would I use with the money? So I would use a series of probably about 3 campaigns. And I don't always do it this way. It really depends on whether you have a product or service and many different factors. But let's say campaign 1, what I want to do is try and build a warm audience as quickly as possible and hopefully as inexpensively as possible as well. So for campaign 1, I might go with either an engagement ad or maybe something like video views or even traffic potentially. My goal here, again, is to test some hooks and also, like I said, try and build a warm audience as fast as possible for hopefully a good deal. So I would have one campaign that's either a video views or engagement, and that would be campaign 1. Now, campaign 2 would be, it depends on what you're promoting, either a lead form or a sales ad. And what I would do here is it depends. If you've got a decent sized warm audience, then I would go straight to the warm audience with campaign 2. If you don't have a lot of people in your warm audience, then I would do this to your cold audience. But I would have either a straight lead form, and that could either be a lead form on Facebook and Instagram, or it could be on your website, either way, but it would be a specific offer of giving them something in exchange for their information. Or if you're selling a product or service, it would be a sales focused campaign. My preference is to do this to a warm audience, but if you don't have a very large warm audience, that's why I said send it to cold. So that's the first 2 campaigns. The third campaign type would be our testing campaign. And this could be to both cold and warm audiences or just one or the other. But I definitely would want to test and have a campaign just for that, where we're testing some different things. You could test ad copy. Even within that, you could test a headline versus ad copy above the creative. You could test images. You could test videos. You could test offers, different things like that. So I really have 3 main campaigns: a video views or engagement one, a lead or sales focused one, and then a testing campaign. Those would be my 3 primary main campaigns, going to both cold and warm traffic. And then obviously, we already broke down the budget where we would have 500, 300, and 200, cold traffic, warm traffic, and testing. So that's basically how I would spend. Without knowing you personally, some general advice on how I would spend that $1,000 on ads. I want to talk a little bit about what I would not do, because a lot of people make mistakes. I could do a whole episode on this, but I'm just going to give you a couple things really quick. I would not spend the entire $1,000 on just one ad or even just one audience. Like, there's a lot more depth that we could go on this. I said 50% to cold traffic. That doesn't just mean Advantage Plus only. I would test Advantage Plus versus a segmented audience of cold traffic. So there's different things I would do within that, but I wouldn't spend the entire $1,000 on just one ad, one creative, or one audience. So I'm going to test a couple different audiences. Now, we can't test too many things in 1 month, because if we do, we're just going to spread our budget and ourselves way too thin, and it's going to take forever to find out what works. So I'm also not going to test too many things. So this might go into month 2 and month 3, etc. But I'm not just going to use one audience and call it a day. And then I'm also not going to skip retargeting. So even if you have a very small warm audience, I'm still going to do a campaign to that audience, even if it's a small budget. I don't want to skip that. And the other thing I'm not going to do is turn ads off too soon. I'm telling you, way too many advertisers do this over and over and over again. I could show you so much data, so many stats of ads that started off not that great, that turned out to be amazing ads that you would just never know had you not let them run. So please don't turn an ad off too soon. I can't tell you how long to let it run without looking at your account and knowing your budget and a bunch of other factors. But if I had to give you just a general number, unless you have a really large budget, I typically would let it run for at least 2 weeks before I would even think about turning it off. There are exceptions, but for the most part, I think way more people turn ads off way too soon versus letting them run too long. So to wrap this up, I think this is a really powerful strategy on how to spend $1,000. It's not the only way to do it, and there are tons of variables, like I said, but it's smart, it's strategic, you're testing, you're hitting cold and warm audiences. You've got some lead and sales objectives in there as well, and it gives you some room to hopefully learn quickly and effectively and very smartly, and then build off of that. So I really recommend you guys try this. Let the data be your guide and then adapt to what's happening with the data, as long as you let it run long enough, of course. All right, my friends, I hope that was helpful. Episode 420 is in the books. Thank you guys so much for being here. I can't wait for next week's episode. Next week, I'm going to talk about Facebook and Instagram ad hooks. It's a really important episode because if you don't have a good hook, you're going to have problems. So make sure and tune in for that. Until then, I'll talk to you on next week's episode. Have a great week. Peace out.
Thanks for listening to the Next Level Facebook Ads Podcast. Please remember to subscribe and share this with all your friends. For show notes, more tips, and to learn more about Phil, please visit philgrahamdigital.com/podcast.